Good evening, everyone.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Uh, Looks like we're on hay over here. So it says, let's look at the Torah side.
Kavod Harav, I have here that we did Dalet.
Yes. Right, that's
You
correct.
say we're in.
Yes. So it says here, Mutar leotzi gerev shel re'i le'ashpa. So it says it too, right, that you're allowed to throw out something which is disgusting in the house. Right, so what are we talking about? Like garbage or something similar to that. Ve'asur le'achazio, but you're not allowed to bring it back. אלא אם כן ייתן לתוכו מים, unless you put water in there. ואפילו רעי בלא גרף מותר. So he says even excrement without canister is allowed. להוציאו, you're allowed to take it out. אף על פי שאסור להביא לפניו דבר שעתיד להימאס. Even though you're not allowed to bring something which is going to be disgusting, זה שלהוציאו, in order that you should take it out. כשימאס, and it gets disgusting, מותר לקבוע ישיבתו. So then you can you could place it, right? Give it a permanent place, whatever. It's low by him. In order to take it out when it gets disgusting. Okay, so let's see the bit Yosef, right? He'll explain a little bit better what all this means, right? For us, this is important. It's a practical. So we need to know. So it says here, right? He brings a source for this. So it's all explained. He says in right, chapter 308, which is talking about the laws of Shabbat. So in other words, over there they already covered this topic pretty much, right? More or less. So he doesn't want to go through it here again, right? The whole the whole discussion. Okay, so let's see Shulchan Aruch, right? What he writes here. So it says here, "Leotzi gerev shel re'i ulachaziro." Kedino b'Shabbat kach dino b'Yom Tov, right? So it says, as we said, right, regarding removing something which has excrement or garbage, whatever, right, and returning it, the same thing applies here as it does to Shabbat, right? So you know what? Let's go to laws of Shabbat and see it over there. This way we'll understand what we're talking about. So we're gonna jump over. We'll jump over to Shabbat for a second, and we'll see what it says there. Okay. I'm going to show you the page in a second. Right. So yeah, let's bring it up. About that. Okay, let's do it again. So yeah, here we are. So you see the page, right? You guys see it?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So it says here, right? This is laws of Shabbat. אף על פי שמותר להוציא גרף של רי והביט של מרגליים, אסור להחזירם. So it's telling you like this, right? That when you have a utensil, which is, has excrement, right, inside there. So you're allowed to take it out of the house, right? On Shabbat, Yom Tov. What's the reason why? Because it's disgusting, So the rabbis didn't decree regarding that, right? The laws of muktzah, that you shouldn't touch it, you shouldn't move it, and so therefore you're allowed to take it out. But here's the thing, right? You're not allowed to return it back. So what does that mean? That you got to leave it outside. Why is that? Because once you took it out, it it's now your house is not disgusting anymore. So the rabbis didn't allow you to bring it back, right? But the way to solve that problem, he says, right, is that you can fill it up with water, and then once you do that, you can bring it back. So why does that help you to fill it up with water? Because now you have something usable, right, in that canister, whatever, right, that you can use. Obviously, you can't drink that water, right? You wouldn't drink that, but what you can do is you can give it to your animal. So therefore, it does have some kind of a use, and therefore the rabbis allowed you to bring it back if you fill it up with water. But today, right, we don't have things like that. We're using these toilets, in the bathroom, so we don't really have that so much today. These types of canisters, for excrement, right? But we have something similar, right? Which the same concept applies there, which is garbage, right? So this is the reason why you're allowed to take out garbage on Yom Tov and Shabbat, is because it's disgusting to have it in the house. Same concept, So therefore, you're allowed to remove it, right? And since we have, garbage bags, so obviously, right, you have nothing to bring back into the house, so you have no problem really. So therefore, you take out the garbage, and don't bring anything back. Just leave it there, and then right, come back and put a new bag right into your canister, right? That's what you do. So that's the way it's done today, right? This kind of thing. Okay, I hope you guys are following that. That's good. Let's see what else we got here. Second. Some reason it's not functioning so well. Let's try one more time. Not working well there. Try it one more time. If not, we'll just leave it. Right, so I want to show you, there's one more halacha here, which I want to show you. Yeah, I apologize for the delay. The Zoom program is misbehaving. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, so it says here, I think you see the screen. It says here, "Eno sin geref sharei lechatchila." We said this already. Right. So it says here, right, that you're not allowed to make something like this disgusting, lechatchila. So what does that mean? דהיינו להביא דבר שעתיד למאס, to bring something which is going to become disgusting, כדי להוציאו לכשימאס, and then to take it out when it's going to get disgusting. ואם עבר ועשהו מותר להוציאו, but if he transgressed and he did it, he made it like that, he's allowed to remove it. So what do you see from there? Right, that we're not allowed to make something like that on purpose, right? That it should become disgusting in order that we should be able to remove it. But b'diavad, if a person did it, so then he's allowed to remove it. Okay. So then one more, right? He's got one more piece over here in the halacha. Right. So he says like this, right? This is an interesting scenario. This one. במקום דאיכא פסדה מותר להכניס מיתתו של גרף שרעי לקבוע ישיבתו שם כדי להוציאו, right? So he says, but when it comes to like a time where you're going to lose, right? It's going to cause you financial loss, whatever. So you're allowed to bring your bed next to the this canister of excrement, and to make your dwelling place there, כדי להוציאו, in order that you should be able to take it out. So let me just explain to you, right, what that means. Let's say, for instance, there is a room, right? And let's say there's some kind of situation there in the room where it's going to cause you a loss. So what would be an example of that? Let's say, right, there's water coming in, right, leaking, and there's it's going to damage. So you need to remove this item, right, which is causing you a loss. So even though you're not really dwelling there. So the rabbis allowed you to do like a loophole over here, right? What's a loophole? To bring in your bed, right, into this room, even though, right, you don't really dwell there, but like as if now you're making it into a dwelling place, right, by bringing the bed there, and then once you do that, you're allowed to, right, remove that canister, because the rule of removing the right, this disgusting canister, whatever, of excrement, it only applies um, where you dwell there. But if you don't dwell in that room, it's not your dwelling place. Right? So then you're not allowed to do that. The rabbis didn't make this waiver in a case like that. So that's the whole story, right? So here we learned here 3 halachot, right, regarding this. So that's pretty much. I'm not going to go into the Bet Yosef here and the laws of Shabbat, right? So we'll, I just went over the Shulchan Aruch basically. So if you have any questions, right, let me know. But basically, right, the basic idea is like this: whether it's Shabbat or Yom Tov, if you have something disgusting, right, where you're dwelling, you're allowed to remove it, even though it's muktzah. That's the basic idea. It has several applications, that halacha, kinds of things. Okay, so we'll go back to our main text. This one didn't go so well, but at least we got the job done. Took some time. Okay, so now we'll go to the next one. Which is Vav. Okay. Okay. This one is not so practical, but it is sort of interesting. Teaches you something. So we'll take a look at it. Right. So here it says the Torah, right? So it says, right, an animal which is about to die on Erev Yom Tov, right? So it died on Yom Tov, the animal. So you're allowed to carry it, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, even according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that he is more stringent regarding the laws of muktzah. So let me look inside the Torah because we have some more things here. All right, so here it says the Torah. Right? Let's say it was healthy, right? The animal, and it died. Right? Even according to Rabbi Shimon, it's forbidden. So what does that mean? It's muktzah. Let's say it was a little bit sick. Plukta the Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon. So then it's going to be dispute between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. So we have 3 scenarios here, right? We have an animal which was about to die, and it, before Yom Tov, and it died on Yom Tov. So that one, right? You're allowed to carry it. So why is that? Anybody know why? So the answer is that since it was about to die, so you were expecting that, something you were expecting, and therefore, right? What were you thinking? you were thinking, oh, gee whiz, if this animal dies, what I'm going to do is, cut it up and give it to my animals to eat, my dogs, whatever, right? So therefore, it's not muktzah because you had something, you were expecting to do something with it. That's if it was already very sick, and about to go, right? That's one scenario. Then we have another scenario where it was healthy, right? The animal. So there, we don't allow that because since you weren't expecting, right, to that it should die, so that wasn't something, a scenario that you had in your head, and therefore you ruled it out from usage if it dies, right? And therefore you cannot use it at all. That's scenario number 2, right? Yeah. Right? So, but if it was like a little sick, right, the animal, right? So, it's like 50-50. Who knows, it may live, it may not live, You weren't really expecting it to die so much. It wasn't that sick. So there, it's a machlokat between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. So how do we paskin? Usually, when there's a machlokat between these two, we go like Rabbi Yehuda. This is the rule brought down in Talmud, Masechet Eruvin, over there. Okay, so that's the tour. Let's see the Beit Yosef. So it says here, Bet Yosef, Perek En Sadin, right? He brings a source for this, which is in Betzab, Kav Zayin Amud Bet. Tanan, it says over there in the Mishnah, De'ema Shemeta Lo Yazizena Minkomah. It says, right, if an animal died, you shouldn't move it from its place. Katav Rif says the Rif, Targema Zeiri Be'emat Kadashim. So the Zeiri says, right, what are we talking about? With an animal which is for sacrifice. But if it was sick before Yom Tov, right, very sick, Tama. So as we said, it was very sick before Yom Tov. Tama de behemat kodashim den machilin oto leklavim. So he says, but here it's different. Why? Because since it's a sacrifice, right? We don't give sacrifices to eat for dogs. Right? We don't give dogs to eat sacrifices. But if it was just a regular animal, right, which was not a sacrifice, wasn't sanctified for that, so then it would be allowed because you were expecting it to die. Actually, right after all, it was very sick. Okay. So it's because, as we said, right, since it was in danger of dying, so his thoughts are on it. In other words, he wants to use that. He sees that scenario possibly coming up. Merev Yom Tov, right, from the eve of Yom Tov. L'achila l'klabim, he wants to give it to the dogs. Therefore, it says you're allowed to carry it. Taltala. Katav Ran says the Ran, sheisiga alav Raza. Raza argues with this. Mishum de begemara aminan, because we say in the Gemara, the pluktayu the Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Shimon, the mechatechin et nevela. So he says this dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon is talking about where we can cut, right, the dead animal. The modeh Rabbi Shimon bebalei chaim shemetu. So Rabbi Shimon, right, admits here that when you have a living animal that died, that's forbidden. So they're only arguing about the case where, right, it's in danger, the animal dying. Only that. So it says, therefore, according to the Rif, that he passed in the end of Mechiltin, Mechilta, right? Yom Tov, Rabbi Yehuda, right? So he passed on Yom Tov, like Rabbi Yehuda. The Itle Muktzeh, so he holds like a wider array of Muktzeh, right? A wider interpretation. So if that's the case, even if it's a mundane animal, right, not a sacrifice, and it's about to die, you shouldn't move it from its place. So it's possible that the Rif had the text כמו שכתוב בקצת, like it says in some of the נוסחאות בגמרא, some of the texts of the Gemara. What are we talking about here? מסוכנת. We're talking about an animal which was in danger of dying. דברי הכל, כלומר, so it says everybody agrees that מסוכנת אפילו רבי יהודה מודה. But when it comes to an animal which is in danger of death, even Rabbi Yehuda, right, admits the Sharia, it's allowed. ובבריאה אפילו רבי שמעון מודה שזה אסורה. And when it comes to a healthy animal, even Rabbi Shimon, right, admits that it's forbidden. כי פליגי בחולה. When they argue, only ones that met more. He was sick a little bit, right, from yesterday. הוא מתה בשבת and died on שבת, או ביום טוב או יום טוב, אבל זו הגרסה אינם מעיקר הנוסחאות עד כאן השלום. But he says, but this, he says, this text is not, right, the more accepted, right, text. ורבנו תופס אותה בגרסה עיקר. So, but it says the Torah holds that this is the main text, right? The more, right, accepted text. וכך היא בספרים שלנו. So that's the way it is in our books. He says, ונראה שכך הייתה גרסת הראש. It seems like the Rosh also had this text. שגם הוא כתב כדברי הריף. He also wrote like the Rif. וסיים בה, and he concludes, ולפיכך שרת טלטלה לדברי הכל. That he says, therefore it's allowed to carry it according to all opinions. The data Rambam gam ken kedat Rif. So it says the Rambam also agrees with the Rif. Okay. So he writes in the second parak, the animal shemeta, right, b'yom tov, animal that died on Yom Tov, im hayta mesukenet merev Yom Tov. If it was in danger of dying before Yom Tov, harazeh mechatcha leklavim, right? So you can cut it up and give it to the dogs. ואם לאו הועיל ולא הייתה דעתה עליה, but it says, if not, if it wasn't so sick, since he didn't have his mind on it, how does it muktzah? It's considered to be muktzah, ולא יזיז ממקומה. So therefore you're not allowed to move from his place. כתב רב מגיד, says רב מגיד, מסקנת הגמרא בהלכות ובהלכות מסוכנת מבהמה חולין מותר לדברי הכל. So he says the conclusion of the Gemara is that when you have an animal which is in danger of dying, as we said, it's a mundane animal, right? Everybody agrees that it's allowed, right? But dafka mesukenet, it's only when it's sickly, deathly ill, right? But it's just sick, no. Because we do hold, right, there is some kind of a, right, level of muktzah on Yom Tov. That's the end of it. Katub be'agot asheri. It says in the agot asheri, the perek and sadin, right? And this perek, B'Shem or Zarwa, name of this rabbi. Im hayta bariya ben hashmashot. So it says if during twilight, right, the animal was healthy, and then on Yom Tov, right, became sick. Asur taltala, you're not allowed to carry that. L'chach ro'eh et tatrefa etzel ha'ishpa. So he says therefore, ro'in et tatrefa etzel ha'ishpa she'im taref yinichena sham. So he says we see right, this dead animal by the garbage. That if he becomes, right, sick, you'll place it there. But lo italtelena adkan, and don't carry it, right? And that which he wrote, right, that etzel ha'ishpa kachi aminan besof perek masechet Shabbat. So he says, what does this mean? His language, right? What he told us here to do. It says in Shabbat kuf nun vav amud Levi ki havu ma'ete trefa lekame. So it says, right, Levi, when they were bringing a trefa, right, the dead animal in front of him, biyom ha'tava and Yom Tov, lo have chaze ela. He wouldn't look at it, right? Hava yativ akil kalita de'amar dilma. לא מתקשרה, ואפילו כלבים לא חזיה, מיהו חתם מפרש תמה, ולוי תסבר לה כרבי יהודה, דאית למוקצה. Right, so Levi was stringent about this, like Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore, right, in a case where the animal would die, he wasn't allowing to use that. אבל Rabbi Shimon, according to Rabbi Shimon though, right, it says Shari, it would be allowed. לפי מה שכתב רבנו, according to what it says in the Torah, צריך לומר, דמיירה בהייתה חולה קצת. We're talking about the case where it was a little bit sick, Merev Yom Tov, on Erev Yom Tov. She'im hayta bariya, because if it would have been really healthy, afilu Rabbi Shimon asur. he'll be forbidden even according to Rabbi Shimon. Ve'im hayta metzukenet, and if it was deathly ill, right? Afilu Rabbi Yehuda shara, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, will be allowed. Ve'im yesh chiluk ben behema shemeta lebehema shenitrefa. So he says, is there a difference between an animal, right, which died, or an animal that became ill? When it comes to carrying it, basar, carrying the meat. Katabti besof siman tav tzadik zayin, right? So it's like I wrote that in a different chapter, right, which is 497. Okay, so that's the story in the Beit Yosef here. Let's look at the Shulchan Aruch, right? This has a lot of opinions here. So now we'll get the straight answer, right? The straight halacha. So let's see. Right, so it says like this. The Shulchan Aruch, right? Behema shemeta b'yom tov, right? If the animal died on Yom Tov, im hayta mesukenet Yom Tov, if it was already deathly ill, right? Before Yom Tov. So what can you do with this? Cut it up and give it to the dogs. So what does that mean? It's not muktzah, right? So again, right? To reiterate, why is it not muktzah? Because since it was already sick, very sick beforehand, so you were thinking to use it if it's going to die, right? That was within the realm of possibility for you. So therefore, you didn't rule it out. So that's not called muktzah, right? That's the idea. So then he says, right? Afa pisha ita chola. What is a muktzah? But if it wasn't deathly ill, right? Dangerously ill, okay? Even though it was a little bit ill, right? It was sick. The animal was sick, but not deadly sick, right? So now it's going to be muktzah, right? In a case like that. So therefore, you're not allowed to move this thing. So again, right, to reiterate, what's the reason why this is muktzah? Because since it wasn't very sick, you really weren't thinking that it's going to die, so you didn't have that in your mind. It wasn't in your mindset. And therefore, right, it's muktzah. So, right, that's pretty much a story, right? That's how it works here with these things. Okay, very good. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, maybe we'll try one more. Let's see if we can pull it off. So says the tour, right? Asur lirkob al behema belo ukaf, right? No, not this one. Sorry. Second. This one, yeah. So it says matchilin be'aremat teven, right? Let's look at the tour inside. So it says here in the tour, right? That if you have a pile of hay, right? Shehu mukhan she'omed la'asaka, right? So if this hay is designated for burning, right, for fire, for fuel, right? So we're allowed to use that. It's not considered to be muktzah. Right? But it says when it comes to wood, not so. So we're not allowed to use that wood, which is like firewood basically. כרבי שמעון בספר בארזה והשוחה תמודה בה רבי שמעון כיוון שעומדים לבניין הווה מוקצה מחמת חיסרון כיס ויקרא נמי לעקומה לקרי כרבי יהודה ובכל מגמיני עצים ורשע עיירה בטיבנה סריה דאית בקוצה, ואינה ראויה אלא להסקה, וזה תלוי בשינוי דת הפוסקים בעניין מוקצה העושה סוכה. Okay. So, right. So basically, like it's telling you here that really depends on what the purpose of this, right, wood or hay is. So, right, if it's made for, let's say the wood, right, is made for building, right, for, beams and things like this. So there, right, you're not allowed to use it on Yom Tov for practical purposes, like using it for fuel, because it's set aside for building. That's pretty much the idea here. So let's see the Yosef, right? Explain a little bit better. So, yeah. So it says here, right? The Mishnah Perk Mevi Kadayain. It's a Mishnah, right? Where is this in Betzah Chavtet Amud Bet? Matchilin Barimat Ateben Aval Lo Betzim Shemuktzeh. So it says there, right? That when it comes to hay, you're allowed to use that. When it comes to wood, not so, right? Rashi explains, רחבה שאחורי הבתים קרויה מוקצה, ושם נותנים עצים בכל דבר שאין דעתו ליטול עד זמן מרובה, right? So he says, right, that a person has like a store, like a storehouse, where, he's got this wood piled up there, and this wood is not for, everyday use. It's like, set aside for building and things like this. So he doesn't use that wood, for other purposes. So therefore, on Yom Tov, he's not allowed to take from there and use it, for some practical things, like, as we said, right, making a fire for, right, or cooking or whatever, you fuel. בגמרא אמר כהנא, זאת אומרת, מתחילין באוצר התחילה, כלומר, בדבר שהאסור שהיה מוקצה ליוצרו, בזמן ארוך, כגוונה מסתמא עוצרין אותו, ובהמה מני, רבי שמעון היא, דלת למוקצה. הם הספר, אבל לא עצים של מוקצה, עתן לרבי יהודה, דהית למוקצה, אחא בארזי והשוחי עסקינן, למוקצה בהם, מחמת מחסון כיס, ואפילו רבי שמעון מודה, right? So, פרש רש"י, ארזי והשוחי, אין אדם מסיק אותו דעומדין לבניין, right? So, again, right, the same concept over here, right, what we're talking about, which is that if the wood is right, designated for building, so we're not allowed to use that for fuel. So don't touch it on Yom Tov, right? It's muktzah. As opposed to the hay, right? The hay is okay, because it's not for building, right? Nobody builds with hay. So, right, so that's for fuel. Right, so therefore, right, you're allowed to use it on Yom Tov. That's the idea, if you want to use it for fuel. Okay, let's go on. So he says, right, so he's telling you like this, right? If you're talking about good quality wood, like cedar, right? For instance, things like this, right? That's not for, people don't use that for firewood. It's too expensive, so therefore, right, that wood like that is not, not for firewood, right? So you can't use it on Yom Tov. Right. So good. Right? So he says, because that kind of wood is very expensive, cedar wood, right? Which is used for, all kinds of building and stuff, right? Renovation, things like this. So you're not going to use that in Yom Tov, right, for firewood. It's too expensive. So therefore, it's muktzah. Okay. אבל לא בעצים של מוקצה, אמר רב כהנא, זאת אומרת, אין מתחילים באוצר התחילה, מני רבי יהודה היא דאית למוקצה, ואם הרשע מתחילים בהרימת התבן, עתן לרבי יהודה שמעון, דלת למוקצה, התבן בתיבנה סריה, פירוש נרכב ומסריח, שאין ראוי למאכל בהמה, מסתמה, סל לעצים, בלאו היינו אוצר, right? So he says also another thing, which is that there's two types of hay, right? There's normal hay, right? Nice and fresh hay, right? And that is used by people in those days, right? For feeding animals. So therefore, hay like that, you're not allowed to use it for fuel. It's not designated for that. But when it comes to, right, rotten hay, which is older, right? So there, the person will use that for fire, for fuel. because the animals, they don't give the rotten stuff to the animals. The animal finds it disgusting to eat that, right? וסתם לצין, ולאו והיינו תוצר פריך טיבנה סריה חזיה לטינה, כלומר אם כן אין סתמו להסקה קיים משנה תהית בקוצה, כלומר ואין יכול לגבלו מידו ורגליו ילקח להסקה קיים, right? So he says, right, that also there's another thing, which is that there's a type of hay which has, it has thorns in it. Right, so therefore, it's not really fitting to give it to animals to eat. So therefore, something like that as well, right, would be possible to use for fuel, since the animals, right, it's not suitable for the animals. So he says, right, why isn't it suitable for the animals? Because you can't, it's not, you can't knead it, right? You can't mix it with water, make it right, soluble, whatever. So therefore, that's the reason why you can't use it. מה שכתב רבינו מתחילים מהריבת התבן שהוא מוכן ועומד להסקה, אינו לדוקדק. דהיינו רבי שמעון, אף על פי שאינו עומד להסקה, מתחילים, וצריך לפרש דהכי כמה, מתחילים בהרימת התבן לרבי יהודה, דווקא כשהוא מוכן לעומד להסקה. רבי שמעון, אף על פי שעומד לבניין, הרי כאילו הוא מוכן מעומד להסקה, דלת לרבי שמעון מוקצה. ועוד יש לומר, שבתחילה כתב שבתחילים בהרימת התבן, שהוא מוכן מעומד להסקה, והי כולי עלמא מודו דמתחילים, אבל לא בעצם שהן מוקצין, לומר כדאית להם, okay, I'm just reading fast because we call it, I'll give you the main idea here, right? Which, you get the idea. So, כדאית להם, לכל אחד מנהיו מוקצה דידה אין מתחילים, ואחר כך כתב דאיקה להקמי רבי שמעון בספר בעזה והשוחי, ולפי זה רשע אפילו בתבן העומד לבניין כמה מתחילים. So he's explaining the Talmudic passage over here. מה שכתב רבינו שזה תלוי בשינוי דת פוסקים בעניין מוקצה. Right, so it says the truth, right, that these things are, right, depend on the opinions of the poskim, the authorities, the commentaries regarding muktzah. So that what that means is that if you paskin like Rabbi Shimon, who's lenient, right, regarding muktzah on Yom Tov, moke matnitin ke Rabbi Shimon, then it's going to say, right, the Mishnah is like Rabbi Shimon, the tekum stam matnitin aliba de ilchata. So then, right, the Mishnah is going to be the halacha. Uman de pasak ke Rabbi Yehuda, but according to one who says paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, moke la ke Rabbi Yehuda is going to say it's like Rabbi Yehuda, the Mishnah. So he says, right, what is Rabbeinu here coming to teach you? So it says, it's very clear, right, that according to Rabbi Shimon, who doesn't hold by the wide interpretation of muktzah, the matchilin be'arimat hatevin. So then, for sure, right, you're allowed to use the hay for fuel, even though it's not, right, it's not designated for that purpose. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds by the stringent definition of muktzah, right, the wider application, and matchilin, so elam ken. So then we're not going to use the hay until, right, unless it's for fuel. The davar shehu muktzeh. So it says also something which is muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, right, because of financial loss, asur, it's going to be forbidden. After Rabbi Yehuda Shimon, even according to Rabbi Shimon, nitbaer b'mash katab b'zilot Shabbat b'siman shin yud. Explained over there, laws of Shabbat, right, chapter 310. So it says possible that even though he wrote there Binyan Shabbat, right, regarding Shabbat, Chazar b'sanol kan, shanol kan me'alchot Yom Tov. He also taught it here when it comes to Yom Tov. Okay, we're almost finished. Sorry to hold you up. Right, okay, not so bad. Okay, so right, let's just finish it off here and we'll do the Shulchan Aruch. So it says, says also, furthermore, there is to say, the Atal Yashmunan comes to teach you the Etzin Afal Pi Shenem Namdim Glasaka. When it comes to wood, right, which is only for fire, he meant that totally told them, but if his intention was not to take from them, until a long time, right, for a long time, so it's still mukse, right, according to a stringent opinion. The Asuri told man, so you're not allowed to use them according to what? The Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, right, who's stringent. So it says, that's the way it comes out good. Mash katab bezet talui b'shinui at the poskim. The Torah says, right, depends on the opinions of the poskim here. Regarding muksed, the mishum mai, the mishum mai the nafka mina le'inyan dina katab. So he says regarding the halachic interpretation, he says right katab ken velo le'inyan matnitin, but not right the discussion in Talmud. Kemal de'atia she'eno inyan lechavanat Rabbeinu bechibur zeh. Right. So okay. So right, he says that according to the one who says. So he says that's not really relevant to our to this book. In other words, this book is a halachic book. So he says, right. So we're not coming here to to explain the Talmudic concepts over here so much. More right. Rather, we are here to get to the bottom line, right? To the halacha. Okay, so right, that's pretty much the story there. Let's see Shulchan Aruch and we're done. Shulchan Aruch. All right, so Shulchan Aruch is very short. It says, right, Matchilim b'arimat hateven imhi tivna saria, right, serucha, right. So he paskins like this, right. What's halacha? That you're allowed to use, right, a pile of hay on Yom Tov, right. But when do we say that? When it's rotten, right? The it be kutsin, and it also has thorns. She'omed v'asaka. So, right, hay like that is not suitable to feed to animals. So therefore, the only application it has is to use it as for fuel. So therefore, since it's sitting for that purpose, right, as a pile of hay, and there has really no other use. So therefore, there's no problem to use it for that purpose on Yom Tov. So what does that mean, right? That if it's hay, which is nice and fresh, right, and clean, so that would not be possible to use for fuel. Why is that? Because that's used more for the purpose of feeding animals, right? Fodder. It's fodder. Okay, right? So, and all the more so, as we said, right? When it comes to wood, right, which is not, it's used for building, right, and things like this. So in a case like that, we certainly cannot use it on Yom Tov for fuel because it's too expensive, right? It's too precious for that to use it for that purpose. So therefore, it's muktzah, right? That's one thing. But also, right, we said another thing, which is that according to the stringent interpretation, right, which seems like we're going according to that interpretation here, according to Rabbi Yehuda, in other words, right, not Rabbi Shimon. It seems like a halakha zek Rabbi Yehuda, right? Halakha zek Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, right, we stringent, and therefore he says, right, that we saw in the Beit Yosef that even if this wood, right, is firewood basically, but if it's not used very often, right, it's like stored away, in the storehouse. So he says if that's the case, you're not allowed to use it on Yom Tov, right? Because you weren't expecting, right, to use that. It was out of mind, out of sight for you, out of sight, out of mind. So therefore, you cannot use it. Okay, well, this is not really very practical stuff today. That's because we're not really dealing so much with the hay and firewood. We've got other types of fuel today, right? We have gas and we have all kinds of stuff, right? We have electric and God knows what else, right? All kinds of new stuff going on. So we're not really dealing with this kind of stuff so much. Okay, so yeah, which reminds me, by the way, somebody just texted me today, asked me a question, right, regarding the plata, since we're discussing this issue of fuel, right? So what's our fuel today? Right, on Yom Tov and Shabbat, we have the plata. We're using that, right, pretty much. The truth is, that on Yom Tov, you can really, work with the gas more, even, right, no problem. You can turn it on, right, to whatever, all kinds of things. But anyway, right, the plata is the easiest and, right, the most simple way to heat up your food and to even to even sometimes to cook with it, right? If it's a strong plata. So anyway, right, regarding the plata, he asked me, right, are you allowed to serve the food, right, straight from the plata, on Shabbat, right? Or do you have to remove the pot first, right? So what I told him was that as long as the food is fully cooked, right, so then there's no problem to just leave the food on the plata, the pot, whatever, right, the dish, and to serve it from there, because even though you're opening it and closing it, since it's already fully cooked, right, so there's no more, right, there's no more possibility to cook anymore with that. So therefore, it's definitely allowed to, right, to serve from there, right, straight from the plata. You don't have to remove it and put it on right, somewhere else and all that stuff, right? You don't need that. Okay, that's pretty clear. Okay, so anyway, Bezat Hashem, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. We'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov. Looks like they now they confirmed, right? They got that deaf guy, right? The deaf, dumb, and the blind. They got him. Okay, very good, Baruch Hashem. All the enemies of Hashem are falling, Baruch Hashem, We see, right? We don't have to elaborate too much. Right? We know what happened today. The ones who play around with against the Hashem, right? They get theirs. No need to elaborate on that one. Okay. So Bezat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Right. So Tuesday is a fast day. But I guess we can do the class normally on Tuesday. It shouldn't really be a problem. But on Tuesday, I have to eat afterwards, right? So yeah, it may be a little bit of a problem on Tuesday. So anyway, we'll talk tomorrow and we'll figure it out, right? We'll sort it out. Bezat Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless. God bless. Laila Tov.
Thank you so much.
All the best.